My name is Sarah Whitaker, and I'm 33 years old. For most of my life, I believed I had made peace with the hardest decision I ever made. But I was wrong. What I thought was an act of love turned out to be a carefully orchestrated betrayal by the very people I trusted most. When I was 17, I made the hardest decision of my life. I gave my newborn daughter up for adoption. Or at least that's what I believed for 16 years. I grew up in a strict, conservative household in rural Ohio. My parents, Margaret and Paul, were deeply religious, and any deviation from their beliefs was punished severely. When I got pregnant at 16, my world collapsed. My parents were furious. My mother didn't speak to me for weeks. My father threatened to kick me out of the house. Only my older sister, Lauren, showed me any compassion. Lauren was 7 years older than me, married to a quiet man named David, and had been struggling to conceive. She was always gentle and kind, the perfect daughter in my parents' eyes. When she offered to help me through the pregnancy, I clung to her like a lifeline. As the months went by, my parents made it clear that I would not be allowed to raise the baby. They arranged a closed adoption through a family friend named Eleanor who ran a private agency. I wasn't allowed to ask questions. I wasn't even allowed to hold my baby after she was born. I remember her cries echoing through the hospital room. Then silence. Lauren stayed by my side the entire time. I remember how tightly she held my hand, how she whispered, "You're doing the right thing. She's going to a good family." I trusted her. I tried to move on. I went to college out of state, built a new life. But not a day went by that I didn't think about my baby girl. I wondered what she looked like, if she was happy, if she knew she was loved. Lauren and I grew distant over the years. She was busy raising her daughter, Emily, who had been born not long after I gave birth. Emily was a bright, sweet child who looked eerily like me. I visited on holidays. Every time I saw Emily, a strange pang would hit me. I chalked it up to maternal longing. I didn't know then what I was really seeing. 16 years after giving birth, I got a call from an old friend named Rachel who used to work at the adoption agency. She was dying of cancer and wanted to confess something. My daughter was never placed with a stranger. She had been given to Lauren. She didn't adopt her legally, Rachel said. Your parents helped her forge the paperwork. The world blurred. My legs gave out. I remember crawling to the bathroom and vomiting until there was nothing left. I confronted my parents. They admitted it instantly, as if they'd been waiting for me to find out. It was for the best, my mother said coldly. You were a child. Lauren could give her a proper life. Lauren cried when I showed up at her doorstep. I didn't want to lie to you. I begged them to let me tell you. But they said it would destroy you. You let me grieve my daughter while raising her as your own. I spat. You stole my baby. Emily, my daughter, overheard the fight. Her face went pale. Is it true? She whispered. You're my real mom? I tried to hug her, but she backed away. She looked at Lauren. You lied to me? My whole life has been a lie. Emily refused to speak to either of us for weeks. She went to stay with a friend. I felt like I was losing her all over again. Lauren sent me letters, pages and pages of apologies, trying to justify what she did. I couldn't read them. Eventually, Emily reached out. She wanted answers. We met at a park and sat on a bench for hours. I don't know who I am anymore, she said. You're mine, I whispered through tears. And I never stopped loving you. Healing is slow. Some days Emily calls me mom. Some days she doesn't call at all. But she knows the truth now. And Lauren? She lost both of us. The house felt colder after that day. I couldn't bring myself to speak to Lauren. She had always been my protector, my older sister, my safe place. And now every memory of her felt poisoned. Every kind word, every hug, every time she told me Emily was like her own flesh and blood. It all echoed with betrayal. My parents tried to smooth it over. My father called me with a stern voice, telling me I was being dramatic, selfish even, that I was reopening wounds best left closed. You think it's easy raising a child? You had no idea what you were doing at 17. Lauren saved you both, he barked over the phone. She didn't save me, I whispered. She stole from me. I started seeing a therapist. For the first time in my life, I allowed myself to be angry, not just at Lauren but at my parents, the system, and even myself. For years I had blamed myself for being weak, for not fighting harder to keep my daughter. Now I realized I'd never had a choice. The adoption wasn't a gift. It was a theft disguised as mercy. Emily and I kept meeting in small moments. A quiet lunch at a coffee shop. A long walk in the woods. She was trying to understand, to sort through years of love and lies. I could see her torn between loyalty and fury, between the mother who raised her and the one she never knew she had. She brought a photo album one day. "This is me at 5, she said, pointing to a picture where she was covered in chocolate cake. "I thought it was my birthday." "But it was yours, wasn't it?" I nodded. Lauren had always celebrated my birthday with a strange solemnity. Now I knew why. "I remember that day," I said, choking on the memory. "You made a mess of everything, but you were laughing so hard. You looked like sunshine." Emily didn't smile. "I don't know what to do with this. With any of it." "Whatever you need," I told her. "Even if you decide to walk away from both of us." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to walk away. But I don't know how to stay." She was 16. Just a child. My child. And yet the weight she carried, the confusion, the guilt, the fury, it wasn't fair. Lauren sent a message that week. It simply said, "I love her more than anything. But if she chooses you, I won't stop her." I was selfish. I know that now. It made me cry, but not out of forgiveness. Not yet. Months passed. Emily stayed in therapy, and I supported her however I could, quietly, patiently. Some days we shared laughter over coffee. Other days she canceled without a word. I learned not to take it personally. Then one afternoon she texted me, "Can I come stay with you for a while?" When she showed up at my apartment with a single duffel bag, I didn't ask questions. I just opened the door, wrapped her in a hug and let her cry. She didn't go back to Lawrence. Living together wasn't easy. We were both strangers in family. Some mornings Emily would eat cereal in silence, eyes locked on her phone, her body tense. Other days she'd curl up on the couch beside me and ask questions about the past. My answers were never enough, never complete. How could they be? I didn't even know the whole story myself. One night, as we were watching an old movie, she turned to me and asked, "Did you ever try to fight them?" I knew what she meant. I paused the film, the soft hum of music fading. "I wanted to," I admitted. "But I was scared. I was still a child. And they convinced me I wasn't capable of being a mother. That someone else, Lauren, would be better." She stared at the pause screen for a long time before whispering, "I think that's the part that hurts the most. That no one gave you the chance. That they didn't even give me the choice to know you." Tears pricked my eyes. "Me too." She didn't say anything after that. She just laid her head on my shoulder and let the movie play. About 2 months after Emily moved in, she started asking about her father. Caught me off guard. I had always assumed she wouldn't care. After all, he'd left before she was born. But of course she cared. How could she not? His name was Tyler Reed. He had been my first real love. We were high school sweethearts, the cliché kind. We went to prom together, carved our initials into trees, made promises under the stars. But when I found out I was pregnant, everything changed. At first, Tyler swore he'd stay. He said we could raise the baby together, maybe get jobs, figure it out. But within weeks, he vanished. His parents sent him to live with relatives in Colorado, and I never heard from him again. Did he know I was born? Emily asked. I hesitated. I don't know. Maybe. I never told him directly. I didn't have a way to reach him. Do you think he'd want to meet me? I looked at her and saw the same insecurity I felt at her age. Rejected, uncertain longing. I think if he knew you existed, I said slowly, he'd be proud of you. And if you want to find him, I'll help you. She nodded. That night she stayed up late on my laptop, searching names, digging through old social media profiles. I called around to old high school friends, trying to piece together his trail. It took weeks, but eventually we found an address. An apartment in Chicago. We sent a letter. A simple one. Emily wrote it herself. Hi, I think you might be my father. My name is Emily. My mother's name is Sarah Whitaker. We waited. 3 weeks passed. Then an envelope arrived. Inside was a single photo, Tyler, older, rougher around the edges but unmistakably him. and a short note in careful slanted handwriting. I never stop thinking about her. If she wants to talk, I'll be here. Tyler. Emily stared at the letter for hours. She didn't speak. Just sat cross-legged on the floor, running her finger over the ink as if trying to absorb the truth. Then she looked up and said, I want to meet him. The day we went to meet Tyler was cold and windy, a late autumn kind of chill that hinted winter was coming. Emily was quiet the whole 3-hour drive to Chicago. She kept staring out the window, her fingers twisting the sleeves of her hoodie. I asked her if she wanted me to go in with her. No, she said. But stay close. Just in case. He lived in a small building with a rusted green awning and a row of mailboxes taped together with duct tape. We parked across the street. I watched as Emily crossed alone, her shoulders stiff, her steps deliberate. He opened the door almost immediately, like he'd been waiting right there. For a moment they both froze. Then Emily extended her hand and said, Hi, I'm your daughter. Tyler's face crumpled. He didn't touch her. Didn't speak. He just backed up a step, turned, and gestured for her to come inside. I watched the door close behind her, my heart pounding. She was gone for 40 minutes. When she came out, her eyes were puffy and red. But she smiled just a little, as she slid back into the passenger seat. He's different than I imagined, she said, her voice soft. But he remembered my birthday. She pulled a small box from her coat. Inside was a charm bracelet, one he said he'd bought the day I told him I was pregnant. He kept it all those years. He cried when I told him I was okay, Emily said. I think he needed to hear that. I reached over and tucked her hair behind her ear. Are you okay? She thought for a moment. More than I was yesterday. Over the next month they met a few more times. Tyler didn't push. He was awkward, unsure, but open. Emily appreciated that. She wasn't looking for a father. She had none to compare him to. But she was curious. She asked him about music, old stories, why he never came back. He answered honestly. I was scared, he said once. I didn't know how to be a father, especially to a child I thought I'd never see. That seemed to matter to her. That he admitted fear instead of pretending he had tried harder than he did. Then, one evening in early December, Emily came into the living room holding her journal. I wrote everything, she said. The whole story. From my side. Do you want to read it? I blinked. Are you sure? She nodded. I want you to know how it felt. I waited until she went to bed. Then opened the journal. Her handwriting was neat, looping. Each page was raw, filled with pain, confusion, and betrayal. But it was also filled with wonder, gratitude, and above all, questions. Who am I? Am I hers or hers? Why does love sometimes mean lying? She wrote about the moment she found out the truth. The way her body had gone numb. The way Lauren's face twisted in guilt. The way she saw me, her real mother, for the first time and didn't know whether to run or reach out. But she ended with something that made me cry harder than anything else. I didn't choose her. I didn't get to. But if I had, I think I would have. The next few months passed slowly but not without meaning. Emily stayed with me. She started her final year of high school in a new district, which was hard at first. New faces, new teachers, new expectations. She got quiet again, withdrawn. But I noticed little signs of growth. She began writing more, she joined the drama club, and she even made one close friend. A quiet girl named Nia who walked home with her every day. She still saw Tyler occasionally. Sometimes I'd drop her off and wait in the car, sipping cold coffee and staring at my hands. I never asked what they talked about. I figured if she wanted to tell me, she would. One day, she came back from one of those visits with a small box. It's yours, she said. From him. I opened it to find an old photograph of me and Tyler, one I didn't even know existed. We were standing under the bleachers at school, me laughing, him looking at me like I was his whole world. In the corner in faded ink he'd written, "We were just kids." But I meant every word. I tucked it into the back of my drawer. I wasn't ready to think about what it meant. Meanwhile, Lauren kept her distance. I hadn't spoken to her since Emily moved out. She called once, I didn't answer. She texted every few weeks. How's she doing? Please tell her I love her. I'm sorry. Every day. I never responded. Then a letter came. It was thick, handwritten, 10 pages long. Lauren's words were shaky, scribbled in places like she'd cried through most of it. She wrote about the night Emily was born. How our mother had forced the nurses to take her from me before I could even see her. How Lauren had begged to tell me the truth but was threatened into silence. How she watched me grieve and convinced herself it was better for Emily if I believed the lie. I tried to be a good mother, she wrote. But I never stopped feeling like I was wearing someone else's skin. She never called me Mom the way I needed. Now I know why. She ended with a single line that hit me like a punch. I may have raised her, but you are her mother. I stared at the letter for a long time before burning it in the sink. I wasn't ready to forgive. Maybe I never would be. But I couldn't erase the pain in her words. Emily didn't ask about Lauren often. Once or twice she'd bring her up in passing, usually after therapy. She meant well, I think, she said once. But it doesn't excuse what she did. I agreed. But I also told her what I believed. That love, even the broken kind, doesn't disappear easily. Maybe one day, she said, I'll want to see her again. But not yet. And I respected that. We began to settle into a rhythm. I started a part-time job at the local library. Emily applied to colleges, mostly in state. We had movie nights. We painted her bedroom. We fought about curfews and dishes. In other words, we lived. And then everything changed again. It was late spring when we got the call. Emily's friend Nia had been in a car accident. She was in the ICU. Emily collapsed when she heard. I drove her to the hospital, my heart pounding. Nia survived, thank God. But the experience shook Emily to her core. She started waking up with nightmares. She clung to me like she did when she was 5 years old. Or should have if I'd been allowed to be there. I don't want to lose anyone else, she said one night, sobbing in my arms. Not ever again. And that's when she asked the question I never expected. Can we invite Lauren to dinner? I didn't answer right away. The question lingered in the air between us, heavy, trembling. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Her eyes were red-rimmed but steady. She wasn't asking out of guilt or pressure. She truly wanted to see Lauren. I don't know if I'm ready, I said honestly. I don't think I am either, she whispered. But maybe I want to try. We sat in silence for a while. Then I reached for her hand. If this is what you want, I'll support you. But I'm not doing this for Lauren. I'm doing it for you. She nodded. I know. We sent the invitation by text, short to the point. Dinner at our place. Sunday at 6. If you're willing. Lauren replied within seconds. Yes. Thank you. I'll be there. The day came far too quickly. I cooked all afternoon, trying to keep my hands busy, my thoughts quieter. Emily helped. She chopped vegetables with slow, methodical movements, eyes cast down. At 5:59 the doorbell rang. Lauren stood on the porch in a plain navy dress, her hair pulled back, eyes wide and uncertain. She looked smaller than I remembered. Older. Fragile. Hi, she said softly. Emily opened the door. Hi. They hugged. It was brief, awkward, but real. Lauren stepped inside and looked at me. Sarah. Lauren. We didn't hug. We didn't smile. But I let her in. Dinner was quiet at first. We ate in silence, the only sounds the clinking of forks and the ticking of the kitchen clock. Then Emily broke it. Do you remember that trip to the lake? The one where I got stung by a bee? Lauren nodded. You cried for an hour. I had to bribe you with 2 popsicles and a new coloring book. I was 7, Emily said, smiling faintly. That was the first time I ever saw you scared. I was terrified, Lauren admitted. I thought you were allergic. I didn't know what I'd do if anything happened to you. The memory cracked something open. We started sharing stories cautiously, like walking on a frozen lake. Then Emily turned to Lauren. Why didn't you tell me? Ever? Lauren's eyes filled instantly. She put her fork down and folded her hands. I wanted to. So many times. But your grandparents, they made it clear. If I told you the truth, they'd take you away. And I was afraid of losing you. But you lost me anyway. Lauren nodded, tears falling. I know. And I deserve that. I just hope someday you can forgive me. Not because I expect it. Just because I never stopped loving you. Emily didn't speak. She looked down at her plate for a long moment. Then she reached over and placed her hand on Lauren's. No words. Just that gesture. And in that moment something shifted. Lauren left after dessert. She hugged Emily tightly, then looked at me and whispered, "Thank you for letting me see her again." I nodded. That was all I could offer. After she left, Emily and I sat in the quiet house. The dishes were undone. The candles had burned low. "She's not the same," Emily said. "And I don't think I'll ever be the same either." "You don't have to be." "I think I'll see her again," she said. "But you're my home now." I wrapped my arms around her and held her close. For the first time in a long, long time, the silence felt peaceful. Weeks passed. Lauren didn't push. She didn't call every day. She didn't send long, guilt-ridden messages. She sent simple check-ins, photos of old art Emily had drawn as a kid, pictures of their dog, dusty ornaments from past Christmases. Emily responded sometimes not. But the pressure was gone, and because of that, the connection, strained as it was, started to rebuild itself. One evening in late spring, Emily and I sat in the backyard, watching the sky go dark. She sipped tea and scribbled in her journal while I deadhead the potted plants. "Have you ever thought about suing them?" she asked suddenly. I blinked. "What?" "Grandma, Grandpa, Lauren, for what they did. What they took from you." I sighed and sat down beside her. "I've thought about it, yeah, 100 times. But proving fraud, coercion, and forgery after all these years? It's complicated. And it might drag you through more pain than we're ready for." "But wouldn't it be justice?" she asked. "Real justice?" I looked at her, at the hurt still smoldering behind her thoughtful eyes. "Justice is complicated when it comes to family. What they did was wrong. But dragging them into court won't change the past. It won't give us back those 16 years. She nodded slowly, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. Later that night, I found a draft letter in the trash, one she'd written to a lawyer. She wasn't ready to let it go, and maybe deep down neither was I. That summer, something unexpected happened. Emily got accepted into a summer writing program in Boston. 8 weeks. Paid tuition. Top students from around the country. She was thrilled and terrified. "I've never been away from you," she said one night, pacing the kitchen. "Not really. Not since everything." "I know," I said. "But you can do this. You deserve to go." She paused, then asked, "Would you come visit? Like maybe halfway through?" "Of course." She hugged me hard. "Promise. Promise." The day I dropped her off at the campus dorms, I cried in the car after she disappeared into the brick building with her duffel bag and overstuffed tote. For the first time in 17 years, I was alone. I didn't hear much from her the first few days, just a couple of short texts. Then, a week in, I got a long message. "I met this girl. Her name's Serena. It's funny. And she asks really deep questions. We had this whole conversation about belonging and grief, and it made me think of you. I told her about you. About everything. And she didn't look at me like I was broken. That night, I sat on my porch and stared at the stars. She was growing. She was healing. And she was doing it without needing to hold my hand every step of the way. It was beautiful. And terrifying. Midway through the program, I flew out to Boston for the weekend. We toured the city, ate greasy pizza, stayed up late in the hotel room watching bad reality TV. On the last night, she handed me a thick envelope. "It's my final project," she said. "Don't read it until I'm back home." When she returned, I waited exactly 1 day before I opened it. It was a short story. Fictionalized, but only just. It was the story of a girl who grew up with a mother who wasn't really her mother, and a birth mother who watched her grow from the shadows. It was painful, brilliant, raw. The last line broke me. She found the truth not in a courtroom, not in blood, not in a name, but in the quiet, unshakable love that stayed when everything else fell apart. Autumn crept in slowly that year, with golden leaves and crisp air that smelled like endings and beginnings. Emily came back from Boston a little taller somehow. Not physically but emotionally, she stood straighter, looked people in the eye more. She smiled more often too. Not the polite kind but real ones where her eyes crinkled. She had changed. So had I. We were finally starting to live without the weight of the past dragging at our heels every minute. But life, as always, wasn't done testing us. It started with a phone call from the hospital. My mother, Margaret, had suffered a stroke. It wasn't fatal, but it left her partially paralyzed and unable to speak clearly. My father called, his voice flat and emotionless. "She's asking for you." I hadn't seen either of them since the confrontation. They'd sent birthday cards to Emily, generic and signed, but never tried to apologize. Never tried to explain. Now suddenly I was supposed to show up at a bedside and pretend we were still family. I didn't want to go. Emily insisted on coming with me. The drive to their house was quiet. We didn't talk. We didn't need to. When we walked into the hospital room, I nearly turned around and left. Margaret looked like a ghost of herself. Her face was sunken, her once perfect hair limp against the pillow. Her eyes, those cold, judgmental eyes, softened when they landed on Emily. She tried to speak. Nothing but a rasp came out. A nurse handed me a notebook. "I'm sorry," she had scribbled in shaky handwriting. I read it, then read it again. Then I tore the page out, folded it and slipped it into my bag. "I'm not here for closure," I said quietly. "I'm here for her." I nodded toward Emily. Emily stepped forward, stood at the edge of the bed. "I want to ask you something," she said, her voice calm but cold. "When you looked at me growing up, did you ever feel guilty?" My mother's hand trembled as she tried to write. She scratched out one word. "Every day." Emily didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just looked at her and said, "I don't hate you, but I don't forgive you. Not yet." She turned and walked out. I followed. 2 weeks later, Margaret died in her sleep. My father didn't call. We found out through the obituary. Lauren handled the funeral arrangements. I debated whether to go, but in the end, Emily decided. "We're going," she said. Not for her. For us. To say goodbye to everything they took. The funeral was small, cold, uncomfortable. I stood in the back with Emily, both of us dressed in black, like shadows from a past no one wanted to acknowledge. Lauren gave the eulogy. She spoke softly, shaking her hands tight around the paper. "She wasn't a perfect mother," she said, glancing at me once. "But she believed what she was doing was right, even when it wasn't." That was the only truth spoken all day. At the gravesite, Emily dropped a single red carnation onto the coffin. Then she whispered something I'll never forget. "I forgive you, but I don't forget." That winter something shifted. Maybe it was the death. Maybe it was time. But Lauren began showing up more regularly, not as a desperate ex-mother, but as an aunt trying to rebuild trust. Emily let her in carefully. They'd meet for lunch or take walks. I kept my distance. Until one snowy evening when Lauren knocked on my door. "I want to do something right," she said. Finally. I didn't speak. "I want to legally acknowledge what happened. I want to sign over everything. Whatever rights I have, whatever's still on paper. I want it to reflect the truth. You're her mother." My throat tightened. "You'd really do that?" She nodded. "It's time." The process took weeks. Uncertainty, consultations, more paperwork than anyone should ever have to deal with. But in the end it was done. Emily Whitaker. Legally. Fully. Finally. My daughter. It didn't erase what had happened, but it made something official that had always been true in our hearts. Winter turned to spring again, and with it came a strange sense of quiet. For the first time in years there were no looming secrets, no legal uncertainties, no tension thickening the air every time the phone buzzed. But life doesn't stop just because the chaos settles. One morning while we were making breakfast, Emily casually mentioned something that sent a chill down my spine. "Tyler's moving to town." I dropped the spatula. "What?" "He got a job at a recording studio here. Said he wanted to be closer. But he also asked if you'd be okay with it." I wasn't sure what to say. Part of me wanted to scream no. That was the same part of me that still remembered 17-year-old Tyler walking away, leaving me to face everything alone. But another part, older, quieter, recognized the truth. He wasn't trying to replace the past. He was trying to be part of the future. "Is that what you want?" I asked her. Emily looked at me, those wide, thoughtful eyes so full of awareness. "I think I want to get to know him. Really get to know him. Not just stories. Not just visits." I nodded slowly. "Then we'll figure it out." Tyler moved into a modest apartment not far from our place. At first, he kept his distance, letting Emily come to him. They went out for lunch, visited art museums, took long walks, and talked about things that had nothing to do with the past. I stayed out of it. Until one day he asked to talk. We met at a quiet coffee shop near the lake. He looked older than I remembered, but less lost. He wore a nervous smile and held a folder in his hands. "I know you don't owe me anything," he started, "but I wanted to give you this." Inside the folder were dozens of pages, letters he'd written over the years but never sent, photographs, receipts from gifts he'd never mailed, even an old mix CD labeled for her, "If she ever finds me." I didn't cry. Not right away. But I read every page. "She's incredible," he said. "Everything good in her. That's you." I finally met his eyes. "She's made herself." "I know. But you were her anchor." I didn't even show up. We sat in silence, the weight of it all settling between us. "I don't know what this means for us," I admitted. "I'm not angry anymore. But I don't know if I want to rebuild something that broke so long ago." "I understand," he said. "I don't expect anything. I just wanted to say thank you. For raising her. For surviving everything they threw at you. For not giving up." We saw each other a few more times after that. Not romantically. Not yet. Just two people linked by a person they both loved beyond words. There were no labels. Just mutual history, mutual healing. And then one day, something unexpected happened. Emily came home from school, tossed her backpack down and said, "Serena's coming over for dinner." I'd heard the name a lot, her best friend from Boston. But this time there was a different tone in her voice. She showed up at 6. Serena was kind, smart, calm. And the way she looked at Emily made something in me ache in a beautiful, proud way. After dinner, as they were doing dishes, I overheard Emily whisper, "I told her everything." Serena responded with one word, "I know." That night Emily sat me down. "Serena's more than a friend," she said, voice shaking. "She's the first person I've ever told all of it to." And she didn't flinch. She just listened. I smiled. "She sounds like a keeper." Emily beamed. "She is." A year passed. We celebrated Emily's high school graduation with a backyard barbecue. Tyler came. So did Lauren. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't perfect. But it was peaceful. Serena was there too, holding Emily's hand as she opened her acceptance letter from NYU. We screamed. We cried. We took pictures under the string lights as the sun went down. Later, Emily pulled me aside. "I'm scared," she said. "Leaving. Starting over. What if it all falls apart again?" I hugged her. "Then you come home. No shame. No questions. Just come home." She cried into my shoulder. "I love you, Mom. I love you more." And as I held her, I realized something. The story that began with betrayal, loss, and silence had become something else entirely. A story of reclamation. Of love that endured. Of truth that didn't come easy but came anyway. Because sometimes broken families don't stay broken. Sometimes they find a way to heal.